Alright, Star Wars. Boy, I can't wait to finally open that can of worms on my channel. That's right, first Star Wars video on my channel, and it's for the first Star Wars movie since the Skywalker saga ended. Or did it end? But before we jump into the movie, I feel like I should give my background on Star Wars because it actually kind of plays a part in this review, and it's a little weird. So as far as Star Wars goes, I am a fan, but also kind of not really. Now let me explain. I like Star Wars just fine, but I'm not like a fan. I'm not like a die-hard fan. I did not grow up with this franchise, so I never had a real attachment to this IP. My biggest attachment to Star Wars was probably the Lego Star Wars video games, because those were really fun. And they weren't even games that I owned. They were my best friends' games, and we would game together a lot as kids. And they were the Star Wars fans. They were the ones who would invite me to see Star Wars movies because, like I said, with no real attachment to the franchise, I wasn't going out of my way to see them myself. And because I wasn't super connected or invested in the franchise, the thing is, I don't really remember what movies I did see with them. I compare it to my watching sports. I can watch and have a good time, but I have no real personal attachment to sports. That's not to say I don't like them, I just won't go out of my way to see them. Except MMA, that shit's fun. But like sports, my memories of any time I watch Star Wars aren't too clear. So I have memories of what happened in the Skywalker saga, but I don't remember if I had seen them in theaters or if I had just heard them from the very vocal what am I talking about? The very vocal majority of Star Wars fans who hate everything Star Wars. But one thing I know I didn't see was The Mandalorian. I know all this talk about how cool Mando is, Baby Yoda is so cute, it's the best Star Wars thing in so long, and I never bothered to watch it. But then I saw that the first Star Wars movie since Rise of Skywalker came out 7 years ago was coming out this summer, and it was going to be a Mando and Grogu movie. So I thought, you know what? New era of Star Wars, long hiatus since the last one. Let's start fresh. This will be the first Star Wars movie in a long time for the general public and the first Star Wars thing on my channel. Those friends I mentioned before are also going to be in town to see it with me. It works out. So was it all worth it? Did the movie live up to all this hype?
Nope.
Now, before we get into the movie, I figured I had to see The Mandalorian first, so I had some idea of what the movie was going to be about. So I watched season 1 of The Mandalorian before I went and saw the movie. And I liked it. But the thing is, I think the hype behind this project kind of got to me because I was expecting a lot better from this show. Not that it wasn't good, I liked all these adventures this dynamic duo went on, but at a certain point I thought, is this it? The Mando show is just a bunch of random adventures with these two? There's really no overarching story. It's just we're gonna go on the run and hop from planet to planet where we do a side mission here and free this guy from prison, and then a side mission there where we track down this assassin, and we have cute little Grogu along the way to make cute noises while Mando does badass stuff. And that's fine, I like badass and cute adventures. I guess I just expected more of a tightly woven narrative surrounding the show. The stuff from the beginning doesn't really come up again until the very, last 2 episodes. The middle episodes are a bunch of side quest stuff. I really hate to say it, but I think a lot of the stuff in Mando is filler. And these are a lot of critiques that will come up later again, but we'll get there in a sec. But this first season, I don't really know what else to say other than I like the adventures these two went on. They were cool. That pretty much sums up season 1. Let me think of something on the deeper level. I like the character growth of Mando going from a guy who didn't trust droids to a guy who attempted to stop a droid from dying because he grew to care for one and see the humanity in them. That's about it. 6 out of 10. Now, I mentioned how I watched season 1 before I went and saw the new Mando movie, but I meant right before I saw the movie. I finished the season 1 finale right before I left to go to the theater to see the Mando movie. I saw Giancarlo Esposito, this time not as a dictator of a Caribbean island. I saw him with the Darksaber, and I promptly got up off my chair, into my car, and picked my friends up to drive straight to the theater to watch more Mando. And I think that's worth mentioning because it kind of warped my view of the movie, because I had to remember that for some people, it had been 7 years since they'd seen a Star Wars movie, and 3 years since they'd seen Mando and Grogu. But for me, it had been more like 3 minutes. For that reason, when I went in and I saw the opening with that theme music, and I saw that title card, The Mandalorian, and Grogu pop up, it felt weird. Like, I had just seen the same intro on my computer screen a few minutes ago, and now I was seeing it on the silver screen. Like, it made it feel like I was just watching another episode of the Disney Plus show, only this time it was in a theater with my friends. But I thought, well, even if it feels like I'm watching another Disney Plus episode, this movie has to be, a movie for a reason, right? It has to be shown in theaters for a reason, right? They wouldn't just make you spend a month's worth of a Disney Plus subscription, in my case, plus the cost of a popcorn and soda, just to give you a longer, bigger version of a Disney Plus episode, right? Yeah, I basically fucking paid for another month's subscription for a streaming service just to watch one extended episode of a TV show on said streaming service in a theater. Who would be dumb enough to do something like that?
Me! I realized me! I'm the fool!
Watching this movie, as we got further and further in, I kept wondering what the point of it was. I kept wondering why this wasn't just done as a special presentation. Like, Disney has done plenty of those already. I just watched Daredevil Born Again and they just made a special presentation for the Punisher after featuring him in that first season. They literally conceived the special during the filming of the first season. And they just as easily could have done a special presentation here entitled The Mandalorian and Grogu. What's really weird is that Happy Hogan and Dave Filoni already wrote a 4th season of The Mandalorian show years ago. But I guess that season's production got fucked up by those labor strikes that happened, so they pivoted to doing a movie instead, which forced Favreau to write a new story. But like, you had the framework for a continuation to this TV series already. For you to just create an entirely new narrative that is not even very consequential to the overall story of Mando and Grogu is really weird. There's nothing really noteworthy about this movie either. I like the score, that's about it. Nothing changed the game in any way. It's really just a nothing burger kind of movie. It feels like just another adventure, albeit a longer one, with our favorite lovable duo of Mando and Grogu. And it kind of feels like that's what this particular IP is coasting on at this point. It's just the audience liking seeing Mando and Grogu's dynamic and adventures together. They don't have to actually make a really engaging story or introduce any sort of new character arcs. They just have to put Mando and Grogu on the screen together and people will love it. But I just don't think that belief is supported by the reception to the most recent Mando projects. The 3rd season was the most panned season of The Mandalorian thus far, and this movie had the 2nd lowest opening, only behind the Solo movie in 2018, and the biggest drop between the 1st and 2nd weekends ever. That's bad. Any way you spin it, that's bad. 5 out of 10, such a middle-of-the-road nothing movie. Now we get to the 2nd season of The Mandalorian TV show. Now, I saw the season after I saw the movie, and honestly, I think that's the way to do it. Because I just talked about how the movie felt so ordinary, how it felt like nothing more than just more Mando and Grogu adventures. That's basically true of the 1st season of the show as well, and while that's also kind of true of the 2nd season also feels like it has more of a focused narrative. Sure, it still feels like Mando is doing side quests, but the side quests actually lend themselves to helping Mando complete his main mission of returning Grogu to his kind. It's actually kind of funny when you read the wiki of the Mando show, because in the summaries, all it is just, and then this person directed the Mandalorian here, and then when he got there and did this thing for them, they directed the Mandalorian there. It's like every episode has the same general plot and story structure. Mando has to do these things so he can get info, so he knows where to go, and then step by step he'll make it to a Jedi where he can leave Grogu in their care. And along the way, we'll see cool cameos like Boba Fett and Ahsoka pop up to get a rise of nostalgia out of the hardcore old Star Wars fans. But for the most part, this show is just rinse and repeat, the same thing over and over again until something changes. And I think that's why, even up to this point, I didn't really love the show. When I saw things like this show getting Emmy nominations, it kind of surprised me because this show didn't really feel like any sort of transformative or innovative piece of media, or even Star Wars media for that matter. Maybe it's just personal preference, but I prefer when things actually feel like they vary from episode to episode depending on the situation that is being presented by the story, and I prefer one big overarching, tightly written plot that is focused on throughout the season. You can obviously branch out into other things here and there, but the main focus should be on one thing. And sure, you can argue, oh, but The Mandalorian does do that stuff. It has a bunch of different situations, and there's that one big main mission of returning Grogu to the Jedi. So there. But I don't know, a lot of these episodes across multiple seasons of this show didn't really feel that distinguishable from one another to me. They felt like they all kind of blended together, and half the time I forgot Mando was still trying to get baby Grogu back to the Jedi. But things really start picking up in season 2 when Grogu gets nabbed at the stone altar, because at that point, Mando and his friends go to save him, and then we get to the final episode. The one that out of all the Mando TV show episodes I've seen was the one that got the most acclaim, the one that got the most emotional reactions out of people. I didn't know what the context of it was, but as I watched, I kind of understood what was about to happen and what people were going to be crying about. And I gotta say, when we got to the moment when Mando and Grogu had to say goodbye to one another, I was actually kind of feeling something. I had watched these two for like a few weeks, and now it was time for them to part ways. And it was pretty emotional, but the moment is severely ruined by CGI young Mark Hamill. For all the emotional things that were happening, it was really hard to take the scene seriously because I kept getting distracted by this weird robot-like thing that was in the scene with them. It was almost passable if you didn't look too closely, but where it becomes really obvious is when his face moves. When he starts moving, it looks really weird. And when you listen to his voice, the tone of it sounds so unnatural. It sounds like an AI voice. It sounds like a voice you can get Siri to sound like a Google Translate voice.
He wants your permission.
Ew, ew!
He is strong with the Force.
The movement on his face there!
I will give my life to protect the child. But he will not be safe until he masters his abilities.
Ew! Okay, I hear it now. Oh, the voice sounds robotic. Oh, that sounds awful. Oh, they really didn't give any shits, did they? That's bad. It's so distracting. So while I wish I could appreciate the scene more, it's kind of ruined by this CGI monstrosity. Although I will say that seeing Luke just taking out all these Dark Troopers using just pure aura, kind of like how Vader took on all those guys at the end of Rogue One, was pretty cool to see. It is kind of interesting though, seeing how easily Luke took care of all those guys. Like, I get that he's like Neo, right? Like, he's the chosen one, the main character. He's pretty much like Jesus in this universe, but Mando being the main character of this show is like a battle-hardened, experienced bounty hunter, assassin, monster slayer, and even he could barely take on one Dark Trooper. And you're telling me that Luke, with just a flick of his wrist, can take on an entire platoon of them. I get it, he's like the most powerful Jedi of all time, right? Don't quote me on that. Somebody's gonna be like, oh, well actually, Luke was trained by so-and-so, and obviously that makes him more powerful, you moron. But Luke Skywalker, I get it, he's super powerful, but by having him take out all these Dark Troopers effortlessly, it kind of dampens Mando's aura. Like, it kind of makes him seem really weak by comparison, and I didn't really like that as somebody who really likes Mando and wants to see him be the stoic, badass killer that he is. But either way, that's the end of Season 2. 7 out of 10. And the post-credits kind of hint that you're supposed to watch Book of Boba Fett before you watch the 3rd season, which was something that I was really not interested in doing, so I didn't. And I jumped into the 3rd season, and I was promptly met with the sight of a returning Mando and Grogu. And I cannot tell you how turned off I got from seeing this opening scene. What? Was I supposed to watch like something with the Book of Boba Fett before I saw this? Like I said, I imagined you had to watch the Book of Boba Fett before you saw the 3rd season, but I did not think there was going to be this giant plot point, these story elements that happened in that show that would directly affect this season. Like, I imagine if someone was binge watching this show like I was, and they were just watching episode after episode and season after season, and then they just get from one episode to the next, and in between there's just this giant lapse in the narrative where things did not flow from one episode to the next, you'd be looking at this thinking, what the heck is going on? And that's exactly what happened to me. I just saw this and thought, wait, what? They're together again? What happened? How did I miss this giant scene of them reuniting? Am I really supposed to watch a completely separate show to get context on what happens in this show? I've already said I'm not a fan of needing to do that. I'm pretty sure I said it back when I reviewed Gen V or The Boys that I did not like consuming separate media in order to supplement something I'm already watching. And it is done very egregiously here. I cannot tell you the exasperation I felt at the thought of needing to watch another show in order to fully enjoy and understand a season of this show. So I am not going to do that. I am not watching Book of Boba Fett, and I'm not watching Mando anymore. If you wanted me to watch and understand everything that happens with Mando, you should have kept it all in this show. So, I don't know. Season 3, I don't care out of 10. Overall, when I look at the future of Star Wars, it's kind of funny. Like I said, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, so just doing research on Star Wars and its failures and its future was really entertaining because it makes you think Star Wars fans are just gluttons for more punishment. When you look at the other announced projects that are currently in development, it's like the nightmare blunt rotation of directors/creators who have made pretty recent stinkers. You got a Rian Johnson trilogy that was announced, which is really funny when you remember the Star Wars movie he made. Another trilogy of movies led by the Game of Thrones guys, which again is hilarious when you realize this was announced before that last season came out. A Taika Waititi film, I personally still have screaming goat nightmares. The Wonder Woman director, and who's this? Simon Kinberg. Not familiar with that name. What did he make?